If you haven't read any reviews of this film and all you know is what's in the rather slight marketing, then Killing Them Softly is probably going to blindside you, and people typically don't like to be blindsided. Anyone seen that poster with Brad Pitt hoisting a shotgun and those commercials where Ray Liotta gets punched a lot, and then they see the word killing in the title, they would be forgiven in thinking that this is some crime film with a fair bit of action. So it's not really a surprise when I hear how many people were turned off with just how talky the entire production is. 95% of the film are two characters talking about the things going on around them. Of course, none of that means the film is actually bad, just not at all what most people were expecting. No, the film is bad because its pacing is awful and it's about as subtle as a brick to the skull. That's kind of surprising because I really like director Andrew Dominik's last film, the assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, a film almost 3 times longer than this one and with a lot more artistic flourishes. Okay, the story breaks down like so. In New Orleans, a couple of loser crooks break into and rob a poker game run by only slightly less losery mafia, setting it up so that one of their members, Marky Trapman, Ray Liotta's character, takes the blame. They decide to bring in hitman Jackie Cogan, Brad Pitt's character, from a only slightly better mafia organization out of state to sort things out and make all the right people dead. It's really the kind of generic any plot that you can hang any kind of idea or presentation you want to. But whatever you do, you still have to try and do it with a bit of skill and style. I totally get what Killing Them Softly was going for, and I'm kind of willing to put this in the ambitious failure column that I'm kind of fond of. First off, the pacing. For a film that's only just over 90 minutes, this thing can slow to such a halt, giving us scenes of dialogue that's not at all important to the plot, it's not meaningful or well written enough to stick with you, and dealing with characters that just aren't all that important. The worst offender being James Gandolfini's Mickey character, a washed-up has-been hitman that Jackie brings in to assist with a hit, who spends his entire screen time drinking and talking about the various women he slept with in the past, and not in any poetic or meaningful way. His discussions of his personal conquests are as boring and unimportant as he is, a complete void of a character that does nothing but steal 20 minutes of runtime, split between 2 scenes. There isn't even a conversation going on between Mickey and Jackie. Brad Pitt is literally doing nothing but sitting there smoking and not really caring about what this loser has to say. There is a point to all of this, and that's to contribute to the big picture of just how lame and out of touch the Mafia really is. There's no high-energy Martin Scorsese adventures or poetic Francis Ford Coppola lingerings. These are a bunch of corporate hacks who occasionally shoot each other over petty reasons like money. It's kind of a refreshing take, certainly, but you still have to make it interesting. You still have to engage with your audience. And things like the whole Mickey character stuff doesn't do a thing but force us to sit on our hands and wait for something to actually happen. But even this idea of mafia as struggling business, of mafia being represented by legal poker games in the back rooms of shitty restaurants and whacked out crooks planning stupid robberies in a dry cleaners, all of this is artistically represented with about as much grace as a one-legged elephant. The entire story takes place during the 2008 presidential election and the economic collapse, and all throughout the movie we're given dozens of sound bites through radio and televisions from George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and John McCain, and the parallels of what these politicians are saying with what the crooks are doing on screen is so on the nose and so obvious that you would expect it from the early works of a film student, not something that can be seen in your local multiplex. And to top it all off, I feel like the film is trying to be fancy and dirty and plain at the same time, and that leads to a radical shift in tone. Sometimes the film accepts its world of stupid and thuggish gangsters and shows it with brutal honesty, including one of the most realistic, teeth-grinding beatdown scenes I've seen in a movie. But then it decides it wants to have a bunch of pretty artistic flourishes, including an assassination that might be one of the most beautifully shot death scenes I've ever seen. But these 2 scenes don't seem like they belong in the same movie. But on the flip side of that, the film does seem to be going out of its way to find new means and to break as many rules at shooting things as it can, with cameras mounted in places you've probably never seen them mounted before, cinematography and editing and sound design that keeps you on your toes. It's a film that's far more interesting to study than to watch. Not all of these experiments work. There's a scene from the point of view of someone in the middle of a serious drug high that starts off cool, but just ends up becoming tedious as the character continues to nod in and out of consciousness. The acting is off and on for me. Ray Liotta is probably the best in the cast, and you end up feeling pretty sorry for all the shit he's put through. Brad Pitt doesn't really seem to have a lot to work with, though he is fun when he's playing off Richard Jenkins, one of the Mafia men, and his final monologue at the end of the film is pretty fucking awesome. Scoot McNairy is great as a way-over-his-head crook going through an emotional roller coaster, while Ben Mendelsohn's junkie character is almost a stereotype. And again, James Gandolfini, who just makes you wonder why he's even there. I think Killing Them Softly might be one of those films that nobody sees now and gets a major reevaluation many years down the line. And that's fine. Maybe someday I'll return to it and discover I was completely wrong and that its idiosyncrasies are what make the film work. As it stands now, I can only recommend Killing Them Softly if you're one of the art house crowd or are willing to be surprised by a film, even if it doesn't all entirely work. I just know it could have been better, and my dad would hate it. Okay, here's the thing. Going into this film, I had no idea it was a sequel to a 2009 film called The Collector. That's my fault for not doing my research, and frankly, I'm just not that huge into the horror film scene. Oh sure, I love certain horror films and take pride in the early age I saw all the really classic ones, but The Collector is exactly the kind of no-buzz horror film that flies completely under my radar. I still haven't seen The Collector, so there's a good chance I'm missing some important piece of the puzzle, and hardcore Collect fans can chastise me all they want in the comments. As it stands, I thought the collection had a few interesting concepts and artistic choices that made it a distinct horror film for me personally, but so little of these things were actually well executed that it didn't really matter in the long run. I mean, this is definitely the kind of film that works better in pitch form than film form. What if The Raid Redemption happened in the house from Saw 2, with a serial killer that looked like a shitty licorice luchador, and then have the film be directed by a guy who's a big fan of the works of Dario Argento? It's the kind of off-the-wall imaginings that make me happy to be a film fan, and the total waste of a premise that makes me question being a film fan. The story is such. There is a super serious serial killer called the Collector, who kills totally indiscriminately. He's kidnapped the daughter of a billionaire, and now that billionaire is sending in a team of commandos, being led by the surviving character from the last film, to get her out of the Collector's hidden lair, which is full of bizarre booby traps, twisted medical experiments, and maze-like corridors. First off, the things I liked. I liked the Collector. I like that he's just a guy. It's pretty rare in slasher films. Usually we either spend the film discovering details of the killer's backstory, like with Freddy Krueger or Jason Voorhees, or we're playing Scooby-Doo and trying to figure out who among the established characters is the killer, like Scream or I Know What You Did Last Summer. This film does neither. A backstory is only hinted at in a blink or you'll miss it moment that might not even really be about him. And he's not an established character, he's just a guy who likes to kill tons of people for the hell of it. I like the opening of the film, when the Collector turns a nightclub into a death trap. There's just a ton of twisted traps and gore effects, a lot of them practical, not too much CGI. It's a rather surprising comes-out-of-nowhere opening segment that really sets up the hectic tone and establishes the Collector as a truly dangerous figure. I liked the ending. Not in the jokey, I like the end credits, oh my god, it's a bad movie, I'm glad it's over way. I mean, the film had a legit good final scene. Actually, you know what, that was all I liked. Ultimately, the film falls into a lot of shitty horror film and action film trappings, from the completely disposable non-characters who are set up just so the Collector can kill them. The cinematography and editing is piss poor. When the action kicks up, it's impossible to tell what's going on. It's not that the scares are hiding in the shadows, in fact the film is remarkably well lit, it's that the scares are hidden in shaky cam and loud noises and stupid confusion. It's both crappy horror and crappy commando action. The acting isn't all that remarkable. Downright awful with some of these non-characters. Emma Fitzpatrick and Josh Stewart fare a little better, though most of their scenes involve them wandering around way too well-lit film sets and being completely silent. But hey, Christopher McDonald is in this, even if just for a minute. The actual visuals, that of the Collector's Twisted Experiments, are a lot like the film as a whole. Theoretically cool, but the camera has a hard time actually lingering on these things and letting us soak in the shock value. There's a very minimal amount of jump scares in this film, which is refreshing, but they have to put stock in the things that are actually designed to scare the audience. It almost seems like the entire film has commitment issues. It just can't keep its commitment to its premise, and it can't keep a commitment to its visuals. And as much as I wanted to get into it, the film just didn't seem to have any interest in keeping me invested. I still kind of want to see the first one, to see if there's something I'm missing that might improve the overall film, but I doubt it. I hear from some people that it's a better film anyway, so maybe I'll Netflix it one day. Most of my problems here are on the technical side, not on the story side. I think the story could have been done in a way that would make it totally awesome. It's got one of those really fun and interesting concepts that I'd love to see in the hands of someone who knows how to block a scene. Do I recommend it? Again, this is totally on your taste. If you're a hardcore horror aficionado, then give it a shot. It's got enough new ideas to keep you interested. If you're a fan of the first film, give it a shot. Otherwise, I don't see much value in it for the rest of us. See you next week.